Hi and welcome to Suspicious Minds. My name is Nee-Nee, and on here I tell you about true crime cases, whether it was solved or unsolved. I also tell you about disappearances and then just generally creepy stuff. So if that is something you are interested in, please click on the subscribe button and set your notifications. Then you will never miss an upload. And also, it's completely free. What else in life today is free? I want to add that I do a lot of research on all the cases. I will never fabricate facts. The facts that I'm giving through is directly from the sources I check. Where it's my opinion, I will always mention that that is my opinion. The case we're going to look at today, I have researched for many years. It's a case that has been close to my heart, and it is something that is incredibly shocking, and it has to do with children. So if that is a trigger for you, please, this is your trigger warning. Do not continue watching this video. The case I'm going to look at today shocked the city of Clear Lake in June 2001. Clear Lake City is in Texas, and I still remember seeing the event on CNN. It was global news. I remember that it showed this perfectly polished house, beautiful lawn in front of the house, a lot of people active. You can actually go and look at this picture online. There's paramedics, there were people crying. You could see a disheveled woman sitting at the end of the driveway. She really looked horrible, and she was just staring in front of her. And her husband was standing very close by, and he was inconsolable. And this case is the case of Andrea Yates. Now, this has been a case study for a lot of cases to come, and the best I can describe it, apart from the horror that took place, would be the result when mental health goes unchecked. Now, to add to that, I would not glorify or support anyone who does what Andrea Yates did, but you will see what led to that specific day in June 2001 and the horrible things that happened in that Clear Lake City house on that day. The year is 2001, and I think if you ask any United States citizen, they will remember that year probably forever for the tragic events that happened on the 11th of September. There was a plane that crashed into the Twin Towers and all of the other terrorist attacks that took place on that specific day. But there were other things that happened that year as well. The jaw-dropping moment at the Academy Awards when Björk, the Icelandic singer, attended the Academy Awards in her very, very now famous swan dress. And I think she just looked stunning. It was also the year when George Harrison had passed away at the age of 58. George Harrison was obviously part of the Beatles, and he later on went on to have a very good career on his own and also playing for other memorable bands. What also happened in 2001 in Clear Lake City is that the 911 call center received the following call.
What's your name? What's the problem? I just need You need an ambulance? No, I need a police officer. You have sent an ambulance.
We need to go back and understand who this person who made the 911 call is, in order to vaguely understand why she did what she did. We need to go back and see what the progression was of her mental health. Andrea was born as Andrea Kennedy in Houston, Texas. She grew up in a very loving family, a Christian family, and she was the youngest of 5 children. Now, she was very protected. Her siblings loved her. There was no abuse in the home. Her mother, her father, they were the perfect family. And even though they were very religious people, very Christian and going to church, when Andrea reached her teenage years and she confessed to her parents that she had ideas of self-harm, taking herself out of this world, her parents understood that this was a mental condition and not something that can just, by going to a camp, go away. So they did start early with counseling and mental health assistance for their daughter. They didn't try and hope that it will go away. Andrea did very well in school. She took part in sports, and when she attended the counseling, it seemed like her mental health had improved. When Andrea finished school and she was in a better space mentally, she felt that she wanted to help people because she was in such a dark and deep place. She started studying nursing. That was a career that she loved, and she wanted to go into psychiatric nursing. After studying, Andrea went on to work at a hospital in Houston, and that is where she met Rusty Yates. She went home and she told her parents that I have met the man that God had sent to me. And she was so in love with Rusty, and Rusty was in love with her. She was so excited to bring him home to her parents, and they loved him because he was also a Christian and he was also raised in a Christian home. And the both of them had dreams to have a lot of children. That was their plan. They said that we will have as many children as God wants us to have. Now, Rusty was a very intelligent guy, and he was still studying, and it wasn't soon enough for them to get married, and they had a beautiful wedding. Everybody was happy, and the wedding took place in 1993 in April. It wasn't long after their fairy tale wedding that Andrea became pregnant. They were overjoyed, and their first baby was a boy, and he was called Noah. He was born on the 26th of Feb 1994, and they said that they wanted to give him a godly name, the name of a man who followed God even though other people mocked him. At the time that Noah was born, they lived in a very comfortable 4-bedroom home. Rusty was working for NASA. He was an engineer. They lived a very pleasant life, close to his parents, close to Andrea's parents, and things were looking up for the family. It was a year or what later that Rusty was offered a better position in NASA, 2,000 kilometers away in Florida. Now, if those of you who know what a very traditional Christian family structure looks like, one of the things is that the wife should support the husband. She would definitely not have had a say in saying, I'm not moving from my parents, I'm staying here, we can have a long distance marriage. So they picked up and moved to Florida. But not only had they moved to Florida, but Rusty felt that he didn't want to buy a home there because he was climbing the career ladder, and he wanted to be able to be flexible should he be promoted soon, that they can just up and go. So in Florida, they knew no one, and they also did not buy a home or rent a home. Rusty decided that they are going to live in a trailer. Now, both Rusty and Andrea's family had said that that was very strange to them because they had enough money not to live like that. Now, the issue is not because of the trailer. The issue is because of the space. It was a very small trailer, a very uncomfortable place to raise a baby. It wasn't a beautiful, spacious trailer. It was a one-bedroom trailer that they lived in Florida. It was while living in this trailer that Andrea became very depressed. I'm saying depressed. It's not described as depressed in the resources. It's saying that she became disinterested, hopeless, all of that. But I think she became very depressed. She told Rusty, I'm missing my family. There's no support network for us here. And I have to stay inside the whole day. I don't know if she could not leave the trailer or she did not want to leave the trailer. And that is when Rusty bought her a video recorder, so that she can now record Noah. They could record messages for their parents, and that was something that she enjoyed. It was in this tiny, cramped up trailer that Andrea became pregnant again. And their baby, John Samuel, was born on the 15th of December, 1995. I can just imagine the frustration she must have had as a mother. And I know there's a lot of people who raise children under more difficult conditions, but I can just imagine if you know that we were living in a 4-bedroom home, we can afford it, but I have to stay like this. I don't know a lot of people who would have been happy with that. John Samuel was born. They were very happy because remember, their goal was to have as many babies as God would allow them. Rusty realized that Andrea misses the family, she misses being involved in church, and they were not going to church where they were staying in Florida. And Rusty got to know about a preacher who sends out recordings about the sermons that he does. It was a big thing in the olden days that you could buy a cassette with a sermon on it, and he then subscribed to this preacher so that he and Andrea could listen to the preacher instead of going to church. So they received their first parcel and they started listening to this preacher. Now, I'm not going to name the preacher because he is still busy these days and I can't really comment on what he was saying, but it is said that Andrea had an immediate connection to what this preacher was preaching. He just preached doom and gloom. And according to him, the world was going to end very soon. There's a lot of doomsday, a lot of apocalypse, so there was no good news. And Andrea started listening to these tapes day in and day out while caring for these 2 small babies in a cramped up trailer. Andrea was in touch with her family. It wasn't like she was isolated. And she would start to tell her mother about this preacher, about the cassette she's listening to. And her mother could sense that Andrea is losing a bit of grip on reality. She would say that normal child behavior in Noah, she would see as a rebellion against God. I don't know what the examples were, but this is what was testified in court. And then Andrea's mom would have to say to her, but that's normal. But she started obsessing about it, and she started teaching Noah about sin and all doom and gloom, that she started teaching this toddler that can't even understand what she was saying. And Andrea's mom really became worried about this. It was around the time that Andrea's mom became worried that Andrea told Rusty that she is having the same kind of thoughts that she did when she was 17 years old, that she feels that she's a sinner, that she feels that she shouldn't be here. So Rusty was aware at this stage, so it was after the birth of John Samuel, that she said she's starting to feel the same way than when she was 17. But she did not tell this to her parents. So what was the solution to this? I'm not saying they said so, but it seems to me that their solution was to get pregnant again, because in 1997, baby Paul Abram was born on the 13th of September 1997. But at this stage, Rusty got an offer back in Texas. They moved back to Texas, but still not into a home, into a more better motorhome. And he felt that this is fair, it's got more space. He felt that this is a stable and nice environment to raise 3 babies. It was claimed in later court documents that Rusty didn't want Andrea to leave the motorhome. Not sure how true that is, because Rusty looked like a very committed husband. It really looks like he did these things with a pure heart and just not knowing. So she did not leave the motorhome, and she had to find ways to entertain these 3 boys in that space. And you will see on the videos, they would play games. They weren't allowed to play with certain toys. In her eyes, it would be sinful to play with. It was also again in this motorhome that she got pregnant again. And that was when Luke David was born on the 15th of February 1999. Now, keeping in mind she already had 3 boys, and it was said that after each one of these boys, her mental health deteriorated. And she said when she brought Luke David home, she felt that she was worthless and unfit to be alive, unfit to be a mother, and she felt that nobody is worthy to be alive. She kept on listening to the preacher, to the cassettes, and she had this overwhelming feeling of dread every day. When she woke up, opened her eyes, she felt that I do not want to be here. After Luke David's birth, Andrea's parents said that they could visibly see her going backwards. She would not bath for days. The children would not be kept well. It would look like they were homeless. Andrea's mom said that you could see that there was something seriously wrong. So she contacted Rusty's mom. Rusty's mom experienced the same, and she was also concerned. And these were wonderful parents. They really had their daughter-in-law and their son-in-law and grandchildren's best intentions at heart. They didn't want to meddle into their marriage, but they went to Rusty's parents and tried to bring it up very discreetly that something is wrong with Andrea. And Rusty just brushed it off. He praised her parenting skills, said that she's the best mother in the world, that he would not have ever think twice to have his children again with Andrea. But the grandmothers were very concerned for Andrea and the kids. In reality, while Rusty was praising Andrea's parenting skills and that she's fine, Andrea was suffering from postpartum depression for many years, and she was not medicated for this at all. And the condition worsened over time because she was not medicated. It was after she brought Luke David home that she tried to take her own life while the 4 kids were alone with her in the motorhome. And it was only then when Rusty took her to the hospital and she was hospitalized for a couple of days. After the hospital, she was then transferred to a psychiatric institute, and that is where they prescribed medication for her postpartum depression. She also was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis, and we're going to look at the definition of that now. But Rusty, he was acknowledging that she had definitely something wrong. When she was there for a while, Rusty was actually asking, please discharge her. We've got 4 kids at home. And the doctor said, fine, I'll discharge her, but there are 2 rules that you have to keep to. The one rule is you never, ever stop taking the medication. And the second rule is this woman must never, ever in her life get pregnant again. We've all heard about postpartum depression and postpartum psychosis, but we don't really understand what can happen in the mind of the person who suffers from that. The doctors are very clear that this is different than the normal baby blues that a mother has 2 or 3 days after the birth. Now I want to read some of the symptoms to you. There will be more on your screen, but for postpartum depression, these are some of the symptoms. You have mood changes, feeling sad, hopeless, you feel empty, even if you have a baby, even if that baby was the only thing that you were looking forward to. In baby blues, those sadness and all of that goes away. Anxiety and panic. You are experiencing unknown anxiety, restlessness. You can't sleep. You have a loss of appetite or overeating. You don't have interest in the things that you used to do. Now remember, with Andrea, with each baby that she had, we are now at number 4, these symptoms got worse. And if we look at postpartum psychosis, there are horrendous cases of what mothers do to their babies because of the psychosis. They say that postpartum psychosis is a serious mental health emergency that can occur after childbirth, and symptoms include hallucinations, delusions, confusion, mood swings, insomnia, paranoia, agitation, auditory hallucinations, thoughts of harming yourself and your baby. You can have body aches, headaches, fatigue. You can't concentrate. You can't make decisions. You can't remember things. You cry easily. You don't want to see people, your friends, your family. You don't call them back. You have self-doubt. You feel inadequate. You think that I'm never going to be able to be a mother. You have difficulty bonding with your baby or struggling to understand how to take care of your baby. Now, Andrea has been released from the psychiatric unit, and Rusty's parents begged him to make life a little bit easier for her and asked him to please buy a house so that Andrea can be close to them, that she's comfortable, that they can be close to the kids. And that is when he decided to buy a house in Clear Lake City. And that was close to his parents. According to what the doctor also suggested, is that somebody should interact more with Andrea. She shouldn't be alone at home. Rusty's mom then started going there daily, taking care of the kids, making sure that Andrea has other conversations and people to talk to other than the recordings and Rusty. It was with this involvement with Rusty's mom. Do you know how grandmothers are? She started bathing the children, playing games with them. She allowed Andrea to take a nap. And it was with this involvement, Andrea's parents could see that she is returning back to the person they all knew. And Rusty even commented to somebody that he has the mother of his 4 kids back. As Andrea started to feel better, Rusty was happy to have his wife back. Grandma was busy with the kids. It was during this time that they forgot about the 2 rules that the psychiatrist had told them about. And if you have forgotten about those 2 rules, it was never stop taking your medication and never ever get pregnant again. However, Andrea got pregnant again, And while she was pregnant, she read up on all the side effects of the medication, and she decided it's not worth it. She threw the last bottle in the bin. She went through her whole pregnancy without the antipsychosis medication. And on the 30th of November 2000, Mary Deborah Yates was born, their very first baby girl. And they were so thankful and over the moon. But they broke the 2 rules that they were not supposed to break. Andrea didn't tell anyone, but she already started feeling symptoms of depression, of hopelessness, of not wanting to be alive. She gave birth to Mary, and she later on spoke to Rusty, and they decided that she will go back onto the antidepressant, but not the antipsychosis medication. It was also then when Andrea's father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and his condition went bad very quickly. And that affected Andrea very much because she was very, very close to her father. Even though they lived close to a church now, Andrea chose not to go. She continued to listen to the recordings of the Doomsday Preacher. I'm calling him that now. It's not to say he is a Doomsday Preacher. And Rusty's mom kept on supporting her. She was there every day, and when Rusty's mom was there, Andrea would isolate herself and go and listen to these recordings. Rusty's mom was so disturbed by one of these sermons that she called Rusty and said to him that she does not think it's a good idea that Andrea is listening to this kind of message. She's depressed and the message is not good. She listened to the same sermons over and over again. So Rusty's mom later on testified that that was very concerning to her. In March 2001, Andrea's father passed away. She was so depressed, she was sad, she stopped taking all her medication, she rejected Mary, and she stopped giving breast milk to Mary, and Rusty's mom had to now fully be responsible for the infant. She spent her days reading her Bible, listening to the sermons, and she started harming herself again. I think this is where Rusty, I'm not sure if his mom had involvement in this, but Rusty saw this now getting out of hand, and he had Andrea committed to an institute without her permission. She was forcefully committed during April and May of 2001, and it was at one of these sessions with the psychiatrist. As I'm telling you this, I am getting goosebumps even though it's so many years later. She told the psychiatrist that she has got thoughts of drowning her children. This psychiatrist or psychologist, I'm not sure which one of the two it is, told Rusty, and it's quoted, and he said it in court as well. I said to Rusty, under no circumstances whatever should your wife be left alone with any of your children. On June 20th, 2001, the Yates children were Noah, who was 7 years old, John, who was 5, Paul, who was 3, Luke, who was 2, and Mary was only 6 months old. Since Andrea was released from the psychiatric hospital, she has not been alone with the kids at all. She was back on her medication, and remember, she was in May, so it could be 2 months on medication, almost 3 months, and there was a change in her behavior. Rusty and his mom took turns to be with Andrea and the kids, and I have to say that Rusty was a really good husband to Andrea. He did his best. He did what he could do. Just as a side note, on that morning, 20th of June, Rusty had to leave at 9 o'clock, and his mother could only arrive at 10 o'clock. Rusty, being Rusty, asked Andrea, "Will you be okay with the kids for 1 hour?" Andrea said, "Yes, I'll be okay for 1 hour." And Rusty got into his car and drove to work, not telling his mother that Andrea is alone with the kids. The moment Rusty left home, and what I'm going to tell you now was what Andrea had testified to the police and in court. She waited until she could hear the car being far away from home, and she testified that she knew exactly what she was doing. She then went, locked the dog in a storeroom, proceeded to the bathroom, filled the bathtub with water, and it was 5-year-old John that came into the bathroom and asked his mommy what she was doing. She said to him that he needs to take a bath. They were all very well disciplined, very well mannered children. He took his clothes off and he got into the bath willingly. She said to him to close his eyes, and trigger warning, from now onwards, that is what I'm going to tell you what this woman did to each one of her children. He closed his eyes and she then pressed his head under the water. He started struggling. She felt nothing and she just kept his head under the water until he stopped struggling. She took his limp body out of the bath. She dried it. She dressed it in clean pajamas and she put him back in bed, and she had pulled the covers over him and she went back to the bathroom. Now, if you can imagine this, it's early morning, the kids just woke up, they're probably watching cartoons. I mean, there are 4 kids and a baby. It's chaos in a normal situation. So I'm sure kids were running up and down, kids were not accounting for each other. But it was when she walked back to the bathroom, she called Paul. Paul came into the bathroom and she drowned him as well. She took him to the bedroom, dried him off, put on clean pajamas and put him back in bed. She then called Luke. Luke was 2 years old. She drowned Luke in the same water, took him to the room, dried him off, put on clean pajamas and put him in bed. Now we have Paul Abram Yates, Luke Yates, peacefully in their beds. As these 2 kids were in their beds, she walked past the crib of Mary. And Mary was already drifting off to sleep, probably had a bottle. It was her morning nap. This woman took her baby and drowned her with her clothes in the tub. Mary started crying when the water touched her body because she was drifting off to sleep, touched her body. She started crying, and Andrea said that she just pushed on the baby's neck so that the crying could stop and that she could have a better grip on her to murder her. It was with the crying that 7-year-old Noah walked into the bathroom and asked, "What's wrong with Mary?" It is not known whether Noah saw into the tub or because he was older that he realized that something was wrong. But Andrea testified in court that it seemed that Noah sensed that something was wrong. And she testified that while this unalived baby girl, her only little girl, was in the water still. And a 7-year-old, her eldest boy, was asking what's wrong with Mary. She pulled the baby out with the one hand and lunged at the boy with the other arm and pulled him into the tub and pushed him under the water and unalived him as well. She then took Mary, dried Mary, and put her into John's arms. So John was lying there after his mother had unalived him, and she said she did that because John just loved his sister. And what did she do with Noah? She had just left Noah in the tub. All 5 the Yates children were now deceased. And that is when Andrea made that 911 call that will probably stay with that 911 operator for the rest of her life. When she finished with the 911 call, she called the NASA offices and asked to speak to Rusty. The person on the switchboard actually knew it was Andrea. They were on first name basis with each other, and she put her through to Rusty. And Andrea said, "Rusty, you need to come home." Rusty was a bit irritated because he thought, why now? My mother is going to be there now. And he said to her, "Why must I come home now?" And she said, "Rusty, I killed the kids." And she put the phone down. And that was 9:45 a.m. Andrea Yates, you can go online and look at her interrogations, and there's a lot of sources still about that. And she went to trial, and in her first trial, even though her lawyers tried to get an insanity plea, she was found guilty and she was actually sentenced to death. Then her lawyers found out that one of the key witnesses for the prosecution, it's a very, very well-known forensic person, he lied on the stand. He said that she watched an episode of Law and Order where a woman drowned her children and claimed insanity. Now, these lawyers watched all the Law and Order programs that there ever was, and there wasn't an episode like that. So for that reason, she got a new trial, and she was then, at that stage in 2006, she got a retrial. And then she was found not guilty by reason of insanity. And I think a lot of the decisions was based on how she improved after she was taking medication. And Andrea was then sentenced to a psychological institute for a certain amount of time for the crimes that she committed against their 5 children. Andrea's husband Rusty stood by her side throughout both trials. He's a better man than I would have been if I was a man, but he was portrayed by the media as this intelligent engineer, works for NASA, but who doesn't believe in mental health. He loved talking to the reporters outside of court. He expressed his unlimited and undying love for Andrea. He was actually so removed from reality that he said they will get Andrea free and they will just have more children because they love each other, etc., etc. They were eventually divorced, and Rusty is happily married to his new wife. It is also said that by the time that Andrea started recovering at this institution, she realized what she had done and she was devastated. She is still grieving for her children until today, and her lawyer, who represented her through both trials, him and his wife still visit her until today. Now, why I say she grieves for her children, she says that she doesn't deserve to live a life outside. She says that her life's not worth living without her children. Reports surface now and again on the anniversary of the deaths or when there is a case of such nature that she is still committed to the hospital and that she watches those home videos every day since she became better. There has been instances, I think the one was, it was after 15 years of being in hospital, they deemed her fit to be released. They said to her, you are free to go, and she doesn't want to go. She's staying where she is. So to me, that shows remorse, that shows acknowledgement of what she's done, and she is doing art while she is in the hospital, and she sells the art anonymously. She doesn't put her name on it because she doesn't make money, and she pays that to a non-profit organization, the money that she makes, that helps treat mothers with postpartum depression. This was a tough video for me to make because of the nature of what happened. I love children. Anybody who knows me knows that I love children. So if somebody hurts a child, that's terrible. It was preventable. I think that is why it's so tragic and sad. I actually thought of opening my YouTube channel with this video, but I had to really build up courage to tell this story as a mother myself. The day today that I'm recording this is actually Mother's Day, and I just want to really dedicate this video to the Yates children and their memory. Please, if you are a mother, if you're experiencing any negative feelings, if you feel you want to harm your baby, tell someone. You won't be judged. And if you are a husband or a father and you know that's how the mother feels, please help her. This is our red flag for this video. Help her. Drink your medication. If the doctor says don't get pregnant, for goodness sake, don't get pregnant. If the doctor says never stop the medication, please don't stop the medication. I want to thank you for joining me again on this video. Thank you for all the comments, all the support. I really do appreciate it, and I really do enjoy making these videos. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye.
Discretion.